Okay, so the iPhone 11s are now out, the reviews are in, ours included, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which I've been using since September, has been very good. Like, I'm really happy with this phone. The battery life has been outstanding, the camera is just incredible, and yeah, I really don't have any complaints on this phone, aside for the fact that we have the same design as on the 2018 iPhone XS and the 2017 iPhone X. And this is the iPhone that we'll have until September 2020, meaning that for the past 3 years, Apple hasn't made any design changes to their iPhones at all, at least judging from the front. However, the 2020 iPhones will be one of the biggest changes yet, and yes, they will feature a brand new design this time. So, considering that I haven't really talked about the 2020 iPhones in a while now, well, here's everything new since our last video in early October. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. In case you haven't heard of Surfshark, it's a VPN, but it also offers so much more than that. It comes with a smart tool called HackLock, which alerts you when your personal information such as emails and passwords have been leaked online. It also features a whitelister, which allows some apps or websites to bypass your VPN connection so that your VPN is enabled for some apps while being disabled for others. And you can actually connect an unlimited number of devices to the same Surfshark account. Surfshark is now running a holiday special deal, which lasts until January the 1st, 2020. Simply use the code ZONEOFTECH to get 83% off and also 3 months for free. Okay, so the biggest leak in terms of the 2020 iPhone 12, let's call it the iPhone 12 for now, comes from JP Morgan analyst Samik Chatterjee. I probably mispronounced your name really badly, but he claims that, on information from supply chain sources, he claims that Apple would be releasing not 1, not 2, not 3, but actually 4 new iPhones in 2020, rather than 3 like they did in 2019 and 2018. The smallest model would be a 5.4-inch iPhone. Then we would not have 1, but actually 2 6.1-inch iPhones, and then finally a massive 6.7-inch one. Okay, Daniel, this is interesting. So, which models would be the pros in that case? Well, Samik reports that one of the 6.1-inch iPhones and the 6.7-inch iPhone would be the pros, while the 5.4-inch one and the 6.1-inch one, the other one, would be the lower entry models. So, yeah, this is interesting because according to previous reports, even from Ming-Chi Kuo himself, who's had some outstanding track record in the past, he did say that Apple would be releasing 3 iPhones in 2020. So the first one being a 5.4-inch model, then the second one being one single 6.1-inch model instead of 2, and then the third one being a 6.7-inch model. And the Pro models, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, would be the 5.4-inch model and the 6.7-inch variant. Personally, I do think that the best approach for Apple would actually be to stick to just 3 iPhone models and offer the smaller and the bigger variants as the pros. This way people who want the performance and the features of the biggest iPhone model and the most expensive one, they can still get all of that in a much smaller form factor. But yeah, do let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on all of this. But yeah, according to pretty much every report that we've seen, all 4 2020 iPhones will now come with OLED displays. Finally, Apple, finally. After so many years, we'll finally get OLEDs on the entire lineup. However, the Pro models are still said to have a slightly more superior display. So very likely the Pro XDR display that Apple introduced with the iPhone 11 Pros, while the lower end models will likely have the iPhone XS's display, which was still very good. It was still an OLED panel, just not as bright as the iPhone 11 Pro's display. Samik also said that all the 4 iPhone models in 2020 will support 5G, which has also been confirmed by Nikkei. Now, Qualcomm's president, Cristiano Amon, did say earlier this week at their conference that their #1 priority of their Apple relationship is launching their 5G phone as fast as they can. So yeah, 5G will definitely be one of the main focuses of the 2020 iPhones. However, it seems like the 5G speeds would not be equal on all of these iPhones. Samik did say in his JP Morgan report that the lower-end iPhones and non-Pro iPhones will be limited to sub-6 GHz 5G networks, which would not support the mmWave 5G, which is the fastest 5G available at the moment. Personally, I don't really see this to be an issue at all, since first, 5G is still very limited to just a few cities in the world, and then 2, you also need to have, obviously, a 5G phone and a 5G smartphone plan. Also, speaking of 5G, Nikkei reports that Murata Manufacturing, which is already a supplier for Apple, they will start producing these new tiny capacitors that will take 1/5 of the space of the current capacitors. However, they will offer 10 times the electrical storage capacity. And they're absolutely tiny at just 0.25 millimeters. And by Apple using these capacitors, it will allow them to free up some more space inside their iPhones for those 5G antennas, which would require more extra space than the 4G antennas. Okay, what else? Well, Barclays analyst Blaine Curtis reported that he and his associates traveled to Asia recently, where they met with manufacturers within Apple's supply chain source. Here's what they said based on the information that they were given. So both the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro Max will feature 6GB of RAM, up from the 4GB of RAM that the iPhone 11 Pros had, while the lower end models will still come with 4GB of RAM. I don't know, this is a bit disappointing for me because personally I've had RAM management issues with the iPhone 11 Pro Max, so yeah, that one should have definitely come with 6GB of RAM. And then 8GB of RAM in the 2020 iPhones, but it seems like Apple will once again be behind the competition in terms of the amount of RAM. Android phones today, some of them even have 12GB of RAM. And I know what some of you will say, it's not about the amount of RAM, it's about how optimized the phone is, which is true, totally true. And like I said, 4GB of RAM is okay on an iPhone, on iOS. However, I was having RAM management issues with the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which clearly indicates that it needs more RAM. Definitely not 12GB, but at least 6GB. So this is what the iPhone 11 Pros should have come with. So while the optimization is more important than the amount of RAM, I think the best case scenario is obviously a mix of both. Optimized and, just having more RAM to play with, because why not? It's always good to have more RAM to play with just in case you do need it for more advanced apps if you're doing any photo or video editing. Barclays also reports that the two Pro models of the iPhone 12 will indeed feature a 3D time-of-flight camera. Now this is something that we've seen reported before by Ming-Chi Kuo back in July of 2019. So a TOF or time-of-flight camera is essentially two extra small modules that include an infrared receiver and an infrared transmitter. So the infrared transmitter will beam a ray of infrared light, which will reach an object, and then it will bounce back, and then the infrared receiver will be able to calculate the distance between itself and the object based on the amount of time it takes for the infrared light to be reflected back. So this will allow the camera to map 3D objects in real time, pretty much exactly how, the Face ID camera maps your face in 3D already. Because yes, the Face ID camera on the iPhone, 10 and newer, that camera is already a time-of-flight camera. So we'll pretty much be getting the exact same thing, but on the back, which will have a noticeable benefit in AR apps. So significantly improved tracking, which is already very good by the way, and also the ability to scan objects or even small rooms, possibly in 3D. So similar to what Samsung Galaxy Note, Samsung has done with the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, for example, and also the Galaxy S10 5G. Now, Mark Gurman from Bloomberg has indeed detailed a roadmap of Apple's AR and VR future, saying that they will be releasing a new iPad Pro in the first half of 2020 with this new 3D sensor, followed by new high-end iPhones in late 2020 with the exact same camera. The Apple glasses have been delayed, unfortunately, but we'll have a separate video on that. In the meantime, you can watch our previous video on the Apple glasses. And speaking of the new iPad Pro 2020, Sonny Dixon has sent over a model of that upcoming iPad, and we've even made a video, a hands-on video, full video just on that, which you can watch here in case you haven't seen it. It's a pretty cool one. Okay, so we're getting 5G, we're getting another camera module, a 3D time-of-flight camera, which is pretty awesome. We're also getting more RAM, and possibly 4 rather than just 3 iPhone models. But okay, what are the chances that we're getting a brand new design? Well, yes, we are getting a brand new design. However, we've had some contradictory reports on how this design will be. So some reports are saying that Apple will remove the notch entirely and switch to an in-display fingerprint reader, while others are saying that they will actually use both Face ID, which will be included in the top bezel, so no notch, just a thicker bezel surrounding the phone, and Touch ID as well, which is quite interesting. And then finally, some are saying that we're still getting Face ID just with a smaller notch. Now, personally, I don't see Apple removing Face ID that quickly. They spend so much time perfecting it, and we also have Animojis and apps that use the 3D depth sensing camera on the front heavily. So yeah, I don't really see Apple removing Face ID, especially considering that they recently added it to, the iPad. So why remove it? So I do believe the reports that are pointing towards the notch just being made thinner and smaller, and this is how we've actually modeled our concepts as well, with just a smaller and thinner notch, and I actually think that this looks really, really good. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about our concept, but I think this looks pretty sleek. Now, the second design change, which is something that you've probably already noticed from our concept, is the frame of these iPhones. Rather than being that rounded shape that iPhones have had since the iPhone 6 in 2014, the 2020 iPhones are rumored to bring back that old iPhone 4 look with a more squared off frame. The iPad Pro 2018 has indeed brought this design back. So we've actually modeled our concept based on the iPad Pro 2018's frame, and I'm absolutely in love with how this looks. Like, fun fact, the iPhone 4 was my favorite phone design ever. and this one seems to top even that. And Korean website The Elec reports that Apple will be using LTPO panels for the 2020 iPhones, which, fun fact, is the same display technology that Apple is currently using in the Apple Watch. So yeah, this will allow the iPhones to have a variable refresh rate, which could go down, just like on the Apple Watch, to just 1 Hz. So this means that the 2020 iPhones could finally be getting an always-on display, something that we've had on Android phones for years, many years now. Being able to see the time and your notifications on screen all the time without you having to unlock the phone is just amazing. Apple did add wireless charging to the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8, again, a feature that was available on Android phone for years, and now there's finally a very likely possibility that it'll also add an always-on display, which I'm really happy about. But this display could be more than just what the Apple Watch Series 5's display is, which in this case, it can actually go down from 60 Hz to as low as 1 single Hz. So yeah, you see the iPad Pro's display, for example, this one is actually a bit better and a bit more different. So they have 60 Hz panels that can go as high as 120 Hz and then as low as 24 Hz. They're called the ProMotion display, and I believe that this is what Apple will be including in the 2020 iPhones, at least on the iPhone 12 Pros. Many smartphones today have started including 90 Hz refresh rate displays, some even 120 Hz, which simply make the entire UI experience 50 to 100% more fluid than what we currently have now. Ice Universe, a very well-known leaker at this point, reported that Apple is actually considering a switchable 60 to 120 Hz refresh rate display for the 2020 iPhones, and that they're currently in discussion with Samsung and LG for this. And speaking of the display, here's an interesting one. Economic Daily News Taiwan, they've actually had some pretty decent track record in the past, definitely not perfect, but still pretty decent. They reported that Apple would be holding meetings with Qualcomm to discuss adding an in-display fingerprint reader to at least one of their iPhones. This is interesting, especially when we look back at Apple's patents that do show an iPhone using a full-screen Touch ID display, which is something that we currently do not have on any other smartphones. Now, Qualcomm has recently showed us their new generation of an in-display fingerprint reader, which is actually 17 times larger than the one on the Galaxy S10 and the Galaxy Note 10. So yeah, it's very likely that they're in talks with Apple to turn that into possibly a full-screen fingerprint reader, which honestly, to be honest, yes, I do think that a full-screen fingerprint reader on a phone is much more useful and reliable and easier to use than a full-screen, a Face ID system. Let me know in the comments if you think that's the case as well. And finally, a very surprising report coming from DigiTimes Taiwan, which was picked up by Mac Rumors, claims that Apple is actually considering bundling AirPods, yes, AirPods, the wireless headphones, inside the box of the 2020 iPhones. Now, I'm a bit skeptical about this report, but even when the iPhone 10 came out, I believe I even said in the full review that because of how much it costs, $1,000, Apple should have definitely included the AirPods with the phone. But of course, that they didn't, and the prices actually went up even higher, even more with the introduction of the iPhone XS Max and the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and the AirPods became even more expensive with the second generation and also the AirPods Pro. So, because of that, it seems to me like Apple's prime motive is again to make as much profit as possible. So yeah, bundling free AirPods inside a box, I just don't see them doing that. And besides, the AirPods are Apple's best-selling accessory. Yes, also, fun fact, the AirPods themselves as a brand is worth more than Tesla is, which is outrageous, but there you go, it is. So I really don't see Apple just giving them away for free. Now, the DigiTimes report did claim that smartphone vendors such as Samsung, Xiaomi, so not just Apple, they're all considering bundling true wireless headphones in the box of their upcoming phones. And I do actually see Samsung doing this, I really do. But Apple, I don't think so. And if they do it, I don't see them being the first ones on the market to do it. Probably in about 2 years, or maybe not even then. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts on everything that I mentioned in this video, and yeah, what do you guys think about the iPhone 12s? The iPhone 11 Pros, they were a bit disappointing regarding the design, same exact design as 2 years ago. However, the battery was really good, the camera was a major improvement from the iPhone XS's, and in terms of these iPhones, it seems like, the camera and the battery won't be getting that much of an improvement. However, the overall design will. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Definitely subscribe, notifications if you want to see more in-depth tech videos like this one, hopefully was, and yeah, more Elixir episodes like this one was. So thank you for watching, I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zen of Tech, signing out. Cheers.